I'm Don Ford. This is Progressive Insider. If you have been watching our series on COVID-19, we've been trying to keep it light, but it's a very serious subject. And we've been doing an ongoing series with Dr. Dylan Burdette, and he is here again with us tonight. Dylan, thank you for being here once again.
Well, thanks for having me.
And I really appreciate the efforts. Your shot is really, it's going to be a difference. It's going to be a difference. Watch, the people are going to notice it. They're going to hear you better. And I think what you have to say is really important here, because we're not just talking about COVID-19, which I have to talk about where it is. The date on this recording is Saturday, April 4th. So depending on how long Andy takes, if this will still be relevant, because this news is changing so fast.
Yeah. I mean, it's changing by the day, if not by the hour, honestly.
It is changing by the hour. I'm not even trying to keep track of all the disasters with Trump and where our PPE is and how they're selling it for profit. And now his son is involved. Just that whole, I'm trying to find someone, hopefully you can help us. I'm trying to find somebody who can be a little clearer on the subject, because keeping track of it and doing anything else with your life seems practically impossible. It's happening so quickly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that's kind of a little unusual before we get into the dark and dreary of what's happening, because I know that New York, they reported every day is a new record of not only cases reported, but fatalities. The numbers of ventilators aren't even close to what's happening, but we're learning a lot from the science here. This is new science. Like you told me when we started doing this, that anyone who called themselves an expert on this virus was lying. Maybe you didn't use those exact words.
Yeah. I don't think I used those exact words, and the reason is that this is a novel virus, right? The SARS, there are experts on the SARS family, right? So the COVID-19, right? As a quick review for anybody, is part of the SARS virus family. So it was responsible for the SARS outbreak in the early 2000s. Not the same virus, but within the same family. It was also responsible for the MERS outbreak in the mid 2000s, and now it's responsible for this one. It's a member of the coronavirus family, but it is a novel coronavirus. So when this epidemic first started happening, kind of the rate of spread, the infectivity, the rate of fatality were all kind of new things, and for the fact of the matter, they're kind of still new things, because as this moves through the population, it has different fatality rates and different infection rates depending on what society is doing to react to it. And we can see that within different countries.
It's interesting. We just talked to, I believe, a colleague of yours, Mustafa Santiago Ali. We were discussing how communities of color were disproportionately being affected at this point. I had made kind of a abstract observation from Facebook posts I'd seen about how I felt like this was affecting men of color specifically more than any other bracket that I'd seen directly. And he said, actually, there are statistics to support that now. And we were discussing how it's not just the physical, everyone goes these underlying effects, even though a lot of Black men do seem to have underlying effects that are affected by this. Does seem to be, there are specific ones that are more common. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not getting into it, but it does seem to be apparent. But we're also seeing a psychological impact of how we treat the symptoms, and how when we go to the doctor, or even in Italy, I've been kind of thinking about this, wondering your thoughts, people leaning on the healthcare system too much, and then they wait too long. There's not enough self-care. And then when these symptoms get too bad, you end up more likely to be on a ventilator.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's true. And that's kind of the case. Well, it's kind of the opposite of what we're doing here. I feel that, people are waiting, because they might get symptoms. They might not want to go to the hospital, either because they are underinsured or uninsured. Right, there's that report from the teenager in California who actually went to the hospital and was turned away because he didn't have insurance, and then later died due to COVID-19 complications. So here in America, what we're seeing is that people who, and that's the majority of the population, people who are, underserved by the current healthcare system are more likely to die, because they're less likely to go to the doctor until the symptoms get so severe, right?
So like a normal flu, you would let it go and go on, and then
Mhm.
you would get kind of sick. You get a couple of sick days. Maybe you could be hospitalized, and it does kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
Still, it
Oh, yeah.
does kill a lot of people. But the average person, the average healthy person, even with these underlying conditions, get the flu, they get kind of sick, they get over it, they go on with their life. But in
Yeah.
this, if you wait like that, assuming you're just going to get that time, you could
Mhm.
very well end up in this final phase, because
Yeah.
it depends. It depends on something that they just started talking about that I didn't want to discuss with you before we get into the science of the situation long term. And we're here also to talk about a problem going on with how science is being applied in as
Mhm.
far as treating this. But viral load as a concept is starting to become a little bit more
Yeah.
of an issue, where it seems like, doctors working without PPE are going down much quicker.
Yeah.
Or I heard a story about a DJ who went down really fast. And I was
Mhm.
thinking about, like, a DJ has a lot of people, like jumping in front of him, breathing
Yeah.
up at him. And if you have
Yeah.
a bunch of infected people in the crowd, their viral load might not get hit that hard, but he is just sucking everything in that maximum position. And I'm just wondering, do I sound totally nuts here? Or is there some sort of sense of truth about where this is where masks actually will make a difference?
Like by mass, you mean the amount of people you interact with, or mass of like
No,
virus and
masks. Says
viral
we're
load?
masks, because
Oh,
masks will,
mass.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
will help keep your viral load down. No, sorry.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
how masks
Um,
will keep, help that, even a bad one.
yeah. So, um, I don't know if you remember, but it seems like a week or so ago, there were some reports out about um, using the serum of people who had recovered and using that serum directly injected into COVID-19 patients in an attempt to cure them, right?
Right.
So the reason for that is that if you have this infection and you beat it, um, there are theoretically, well, not theoretically, there are antibodies in your blood against this virus, right? The specific virus that you got infected with. And the idea being that you can re-inject that serum into somebody, those antibodies will still be viable and they will attack the virus, right? Um, this is coming back to the
Sure.
mask.
No. Sure. I was
No.
like, oh God, I was so far off.
No. So the thing is, right? One of the dangers of the coronavirus, one of the things that makes it so easy, is its adaptability, right? It has this adaptability because it mutates very quickly, right? That's how it can jump from one species to another. Um, and as you know, if you look at the phylogenetic tree of the viruses that have been sequenced from patients, you know that there's a wide range now of viruses, right? So theoretically, even if you have this virus, if your body's starting to produce antibodies to it, depending on what part of the virus your body is producing these antibodies to, um, if you are then in contact with another person who's been infected, who possibly has a different mutation in the virus, if you take that virus in, if your body is not attacking the specific part of that virus, um, that virus may have been mutated just enough so that it's recognized as something completely new to your body and the infection starts all over again.
This sounds terrible. This is the reinfection rate that we're so unsure
Yeah.
about when you have these
So
mutations.
yeah, so but the thing is, right, the masks for most of us are not to keep the virus out of us, right? Because that's not the way most surgical masks work. The mask that we are being asked to wear in Illinois, they've said at this point, if you are going to be out, wear a mask of some kind. Now we're all out of like actual masks, so they are telling people, well, wear at least a cloth mask if you're going to go outside. So what that mask that they're asking us to wear is to minimize the amount of droplets that we are putting out that may potentially infect somebody else because we could be an asymptomatic carrier anytime we go out, right?
This is all about viral pollution at this point, and
Yeah,
and at that point we're talking, and so this is like a step away from the idea that I was expressing about someone in a certain situation getting like so much of the virus that it
yeah,
takes them out really fast. So the masks do work, and I really appreciate that explanation, by the way, because people are
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, the cloth mask doesn't work. Oh, this isn't that." It's like, yeah, well, it doesn't work as well, but it does
it doesn't work as
minimize.
well. It does
It,
minimize, yeah.
and so it's always better to have something than nothing.
Yeah.
But
So, but I just want to just finish up this. It's not necessarily the amount of virus that you're taking in. If you're in a crowd of unprotected individuals, or and you are unprotected yourself, it's all of the different viruses. Because theoretically, each person within that crowd could have a different mutation of the virus, which would require your body to produce a whole new immune response to
oh,
each
so what you're saying is
individual
you
one.
could end up getting two different types of COVID
You could end
and
up getting 10
eight
different types.
times of COVID
Yeah,
at a time,
yeah,
and that's just making that much more stuff for your body to work against.
yeah,
So
yeah.
even when you've had it once, you are by no means clear on this. And if you had it
Well,
early,
we don't know. We don't know.
okay, we
Honestly,
just don't know.
we don't know. Yeah. Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, you could be reinfected. Like I said, we don't know if these cases that we're seeing right now that appear to be reinfections are actually reinfections or they're just relapses.
Right, and we're not going to know that until we have a proper antibody check,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How far away from we from something like that? I've heard some murmurs of things, but
Ooh. Here.
great, great, great. That's fantastic.
No.
Um,
So right, like we
I mean,
talked
you're
about
just being
before.
realistic with me,
No,
which
no,
I
no.
always
Like
appreciate. I always
like
appreciate
we
that, Dylan.
Yeah, like we talked about before, I worked on developing novel antibodies and novel drugs. Since most of the scientific staff where I work has been sent to work from home, we are all now working on COVID-19, um, and so we have daily briefings on this. And the most recent one we have is that if we have to design something completely new, we're looking at about a year. If we have to repurpose something that
And
we
that's
already
to
have,
mass production, right? That's like a year from
yeah,
designing to mass
that's the
production.
mass production. That's to
Okay,
like to get it out to everybody. No,
scale it, right?
yeah, but if we're looking on repurposing something that we currently already has been developed that we just don't know works against this, which is we're throwing everything at this. Like it's
Right.
not just my company. It's we're working with international consortiums and academic and private, and everyone's trying to work on a cure for this thing, right? So the thing is, if we can repurpose something that has already been invented and has already gone through those kind of initial safety testings, we might be able to get something out sooner than that. But
Because even human trials take a long, like you have to do like a
yeah,
year to see
yeah.
how. We already tried a human trial vaccine on someone. That was real. It wasn't just like to please the masses, was it?
I'm sorry. Wait, what?
Remember when they did that vaccine trial, like right when the virus broke, they did the vaccine
Oh,
trial and the person was doing interviews everywhere, but it felt like it was so fast. I was like, how did they
yeah.
have something this
I
quickly?
don't I don't think anything actually came of that. It could have just been a one-off. Because I haven't I remember now and it kind of went away really quickly, so I don't know.
Would you mind looking into that for me
I could
as a
totally look into
professional?
that.
Because
Yeah, I
I
could.
would be I'd be very curious because they had said something like a year to see how the stuff was going, and it felt like one of those
Mhm.
like please the masses thing. Like they just did something
Yeah.
so fast. I was like, I don't buy this. Anyways, moving on. Speaking of things that I don't buy, is
Yeah.
that there is a push apparently to remove. I'm a little confused, but that basically to stop using science or put limitations on science and
Yeah.
how we handle this crisis. Can you
Yeah.
explain this to me?
Yeah. So this is something that the EPA, the political appointees, the political wing of the EPA started trying to do, I want to say almost a year ago, maybe a bit more. Um, which is what they call it the transparency in science rule, um, which was actually something that came up. It was invented back in the early '90s by big tobacco companies as a way to hamstring epidemiological science. Um,
You mean the things
and
that would hurt their profit margins when people
exactly,
realized smoking
exactly,
was bad for them in whole new ways?
yeah, yeah. So now that all of these health professionals are kind of distracted, they are moving forward trying to push this through again. So what it does is if you just look at it on the surface and you don't actually think about it, it seems to make sense. And what they're proposing is that only only epidemiological data that the all of the underlying patient data is actually available to the EPA or available to basically anybody that wants it can be included when you're making scientific decisions on EPA rules, right? Now, this doesn't sound terrible if you don't think about it, but when you actually start to think about it, you start to realize how really evil, I want to say, this is. Um, and I can give you a couple examples of that. So one of the things they say is that all of these data sets need to be made available to anybody who wants them in order for them to be considered for EPA rulemaking or EPA rulings, whatever. So what that means is that the companies who are trying to maximize profit margins also can get a hold of this data, right? So if you say something like um, smoking causes lung cancer, right? Well, then what the tobacco, like here I'm using a hypothetical, what the tobacco company could do is get a hold of that data and say, oh, but smoking only causes lung cancer. And look, all of the people that you had for this, they were over 30. So you can't say that smoking
Well,
causes lung cancer. All
isn't
you
this
can
also a
say is that
medical issue? I mean, a lot of this stuff is private.
it's a huge medical issue, and so that I'm gonna give you another example of why this is bad. What the EPA is saying is that this data should all be made available, but it should be anonymized. What they mean by like anonymized is really like the base level that we in the scientific community would consider safe. All they're talking about is removing name, social security number, address. But what's been shown is that by using modern AI and machine
Yeah, I was about
learning,
to say, now we could reverse engineer that with modern
yeah,
AI, like
if
overnight.
you put, yeah, no, it's been demonstrated. You can put in an anonymized set of data with machine learning, hook it up to the internet, tell it, find out who these people are, and 99.9% of the time, they can put the data back to that person's name, right?
Yeah, especially with voter data, which is public. If you
Yeah,
combine the two together, you could
yeah.
do it overnight. That's a
So
simple program to write.
yeah, so what you're talking about now is, now whatever company is trying to escape this ruling can get a hold of that data, say they want to go and send a lawyer to each of these people's houses and ask them
Oh,
to
I get what you're saying. Yeah, and
ask them
challenge, and
sign
it
saying
becomes a
this.
liability issue at the end of the
Exactly,
day. Yeah.
exactly. Not only that, but all of this epidemiological data is generally done in a university setting. University has what's called IRB, internal review boards, right? Or basically, they look over any studies that you're going to be doing. Uh, when you propose a study, it has to go through the IRB, and the IRB has to secure the data and has to make sure that the data that you are going to be generating is going to be protected. Patient data is going to be protected. Now, once these studies are done, the EPA comes back and says, okay, well, we can't use these studies unless you get us all of that raw patient data, right? Which is going to be a violation of these universities' internal review boards, which means that any professor, any person who makes their data makes their data available to the EPA so that it can be used to protect others is now putting themselves at risk of censure from their institution's IRBs, right?
So this actually has a lot of really intense implications
Yeah,
because people will either be punished for giving data or stop wanting to give data.
yeah,
And either way, you're looking at having incomplete surveys
yeah,
of data sets, and then you can't make all your
yeah,
decision making is abstract at that point.
yeah. Well, and also like there's another example of why it's really terrible, and kind of the worst example of why it's really terrible, which is that if you right, so you want this data to be used in an EPA rulemaking, say it's for something very bad, like something that is killing people. Well, now, say all of this data has to be made available, but the study you've done, several of the people whose data you were using are now dead because they're dead of, say, an environmental toxin. You can't get you can't get them to sign on and say, okay, I agree to more disclosure of this data because those people are now dead. And that means that the data showing that, oh, what you're doing here is actually killing people cannot be used by the EPA to make these decisions, right? So does that make sense?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm a little
Okay.
confused. I'm not gonna lie. I love saying I understand everything perfectly, just even when I don't. But
Okay.
it's just
So
these. I think the important factor is that these things have a lot of really complicated implications, and there's really
yeah,
no way to look at this where you can say, "Oh, this is a good idea." Not only are they breaking these rules of all these colleges, it's sort of like we're dealing with this a lot with people in politics, especially on the Trump side of things, because they don't understand structure, party
yeah,
structure, any sort of rules or balance or why things work the way they do and how we respect these certain situations. They just don't care. They want what they want, and then when they want it, it's not even austerity. It's something else entirely. I don't know. I don't
yeah,
know. I think it's I think it's more of a the hostile takeover
yeah,
sort of mentality,
yeah,
that vibe. Like, I took you over, you're mine now, you do what I want. And you're like,
yeah,
no, that's not how this works. But I guess it
yeah.
does. So anyways, how do we fight this? So you have a thing coming up on the 15th because it's not
So
done. It's not a done deal.
yeah, so so here's the thing. Since it is a rule change, it has to be open to public comment. The last time that they proposed this rule, there were so many comments from so many people pouring in, telling them that this was a bad idea that they had to kind of hold back on it. So now they're
But with
doing it.
but with no way to get public into the room, right? Because they're
Exactly.
not.
And what
Yeah.
they're saying is we're not going to be doing a public hearing on this because of COVID-19. So there's not going to be a public hearing.
Oh,
So
this
what
is not the hearing you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So what's happening is the Union of Concerned Scientists is holding a public hearing on this. It's going to be an online public hearing. That's happening April 14th.
Okay, so
Um,
and then how does this go into the? Okay, you're going to hold it on the 14th, and the decision's
there's
being held on the 15th.
Yeah, and so the thing is, even though they're not having a public hearing, they still have to be open for public comment, right? Um, However, what they're doing is they're restricting it. They're saying that you can only make a public comment on the amendments to the rule that they're putting out now. You can't actually comment on how bad the original rule that they want to make is, right? So they're further restricting. So if someone is interested, the Union of Concerned Scientists also has a guide to help you as you craft your comments so that you're only talking about the amendments to the rule, not exactly talking about the actual rule, because if you're talking about how bad the actual rule is, they'll say, oh, this doesn't apply because this is just about the amendment.
Interesting, interesting. It's just this is feels like the DNC rules on just PCP. It's like the worst. Like, I always try to explain to people when they complain about the Democrats. I'm like, yeah, but the Republicans are so much worse. And they're like, oh, that's the lesser of evils. And I'm like, no, it's the greater good. It's not the have you dealt with this? And what you're talking about is just a nightmare scenario because they're talking about hammering this through. And we're seeing this a lot out of the EPA right now with a couple of
Yeah.
things where
Well,
they're putting through stuff they wouldn't normally be able to,
yeah.
um, which is kind of like there's something going on with the tar sands and oil pipelines and
Yeah.
barring protesters.
Yeah.
Ironically, at the same time, oil sands is
Are no longer
worthless
profitable. Yeah.
right now. It's not worth shipping it down
Yeah.
anymore. Oil's so cheap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the kind of one of the main things that they've done is they've actually halted all enforcement. I don't know if you're aware of that. There is no EPA enforcement at this point because of they say because of the COVID-19 epidemic.
So people,
Um,
so they can just polluters can do whatever they want, and there
yeah,
was already really nobody checking up on them in the first place. And this really
no,
speaks to the need of why we need to get Trump out, because I think the environment is becoming a bigger and bigger factor in this because we still have climate change going on, which is kind of taking a turn for the better with all the people off the road. Los Angeles is
yeah,
beautiful out every day.
yeah. I've heard.
Um,
I've heard Los Angeles is beautiful
it's
now.
very nice. Doesn't smell like smoke. I'm right by the freeway too, so it's great.
Ah, yeah,
But it doesn't change the fact that we have these larger issues, and then it gets into preparation for how are these next things going to be handled? Like, how are the next waves? Is this going to be something that we're like COVID-19 is really, I think, going to be the big deciding factor moving forward on what kind of society we end up having? Because
yeah,
I think that it's not going away. If we're dealing with 8 variations in 3 months or 4 months or whatever it actually is,
yeah,
we're still talking about, that's more than one a month. And with
yeah.
more places for it to mutate, and I assume these faster tests aren't going to be doing genome sequencing on everybody too. So we're going to
Probably not.
start losing that trail of data pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to be losing like where the different viruses come from and all that sort of stuff. So it's like we're sacrificing. Is there something to say about
Well,
this? We need the speedy ones. Like we
we're
need.
yeah. I mean, and we're still going to have those samples, and we're still going to be running genomic analysis. It's just that the faster we can run the test faster, but still keep those samples and keep running the genomic analysis on them. It's just
Okay,
not going
well,
to be at the same time, right?
that seems like something that needs to be. We make sure needs to make sure we are is in the fine print on everything we do here, because we
Yeah.
lose the
I mean,
state of the
I'm
samples.
yeah. I think the epidemiologists are going to continue to run sequencing on these and verify what we're actually seeing. Yeah.
Question for you, science nerd question. It's got to be kind of interesting to have a virus like this to work on, though. It's a nightmare of a situation, but it is a fascinating, but it's just changing so quickly and doing so much, and it's so aggressive and virtual. It's like super strong. It's like
Yeah.
if Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in True Lies was a virus. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I'm seeing it, basically.
Well, I mean, it's the thing is, I don't. There's still not a cure for the original SARS that happened in early 2000s. There's no vaccine. There's no cure for that. It just went away. Um, the cure for
Did
the
it not mutate? Was it not as strong? What was the difference between
it
this and the
didn't
last one?
spread as quickly. It wasn't as infectious.
And did it have a long incubation rate like this one does?
It no, I'm trying to remember right now. It did not. It didn't have as long of an incubation time. It wasn't as infective, and it had a much higher fatality rate.
Oh, so it
Um,
killed people quicker and they were
yeah,
less spread, and
yeah,
it was in more rural areas. I mean,
yeah,
it did get a lot of people to get it, but
yeah,
yeah, the big thing it seems like with this is this incubation rate is that they no one is taking
yeah,
it seriously, and
yeah,
then the asymptomaticness of it.
yeah. Mm. Well, and then the MERS outbreak was actually contained not by curing it in humans, but by curing it in camels, right? Because MERS was a virus that jumped from camels, so they got rid of it by inoculating camels rather than the humans. Um, so those are both viruses that could theoretically come back at any time. MERS also had a very high fatality rate, didn't spread as quickly. Um, but this COVID-19 is, it kind of hits that balance point where it spreads and still has a high fatality rate. So it's an interesting strain, and we've been doing a lot of research into how exactly it is able to do that, and we've come up with there's some very interesting things about the virus. Um, I wouldn't say it's fun to work on, right? But it's what we're learning about it is hopefully going to aid in fighting viral epidemics uh, as we move forward as a society.
The mutation rate seems really unusual, and it is going to be interesting to see how it affects different people as we get the science of it all down.
Yeah, yeah,
Just I'm hoping the takeaway from this whole thing is that we have a happier and healthier society at the end of this because we take better care of our people. Because I think
yeah,
that's going to be the big takeaway. I don't think we're
yeah,
going to walk away from this with if it mutates the way we're thinking it does, and if it becomes like a new flu but a deadlier, more version of it that we're dealing with, then there's really no solution besides taking care of the people much, much better and
oh
having
yeah,
a whole bunch of ventilators that work.
hmm,
Because, I mean, we
yeah,
got to keep people from that position of needing them. At the same time, we can't guarantee that we can keep someone from that position needing. We can't guarantee that someone is just going to stay healthy or treat their symptoms and they're going to be fine. We can't
yeah,
guarantee anything. It's totally random. Or
Yeah.
it's not, well, it's not random, but we haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
What is,
Yeah.
I've been reading a thing about vitamin D playing a role in it. I read a whole study. It was an actual study.
Yeah.
Anything there?
Um, well, if I recall, that study was just talking about how if you were not vitamin D deficient, you had a better outcomes with this, right? Is that what is that the
Yeah,
study
that
that
was
we're
the
talking
study
about?
I read. They had said that the people who had died had a vitamin D deficiency. They had a theory about this, and then they
Yeah,
tested it, and they had said they could prove there was a correlation, but I don't think it was. They hadn't. It takes a couple more studies to do
yeah,
causation.
yeah. It's so this, a single study is basically a single experiment. And we found, yeah, that it seems like there may be a link between surviving this and not being vitamin D deficient. At the same time, there are a lot of people in the United States that are dying from this who are not vitamin D deficient. Um, the vitamin D deficiency for all of the things that it causes is not something that a lot of people in the United States suffer from. Right? In other countries, there are a lot more people that suffer from vitamin D deficiency. We don't have it as much here in the United States. One of the reasons is because we tend to eat a lot of dairy as a society, right? They're not, not everybody eats dairy, obviously, but or consumes dairy, but a lot of people consume a lot more dairy in the United States than in a lot of other countries, and that's a great. It's a great treatment for getting your vitamin D.
So pretty much, there's nothing to pin
So
this on other than our general broken society. That's why it's getting so bad so fast.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, good.
pretty much.
Cool. All
I mean,
right. All right. Well,
like
on
I
that
said,
note, it's been Dr. Dill. I'm joking. I'm joking.
no, no, no. No, what I said at the beginning kind of maintains the way that this moves through society is partially a result of the overall health of the society, but it's also the society behavior that determines the outcomes of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, that's actually the same thing we were talking about with Dr. Mustafa about the psychological impact of what's happening and
Yeah,
how we don't seek treatment till it's too late, and our diets are particularly terrible. So
yeah,
when you mix those things together, and then you don't drink enough water, which is another major issue with this, you're not giving your body what it needs to develop antibodies. You're not, because that's the thing, I guess, right? Maybe we're framing this wrong. We're not trying to fight the virus exactly. That's two steps. One step is we're trying to develop antibodies that will fight the virus, right? Essentially, am I getting
are you
somewhere with
talking
that?
about we as in
Like when you fight a
medical
virus,
scientists?
you
Oh, no,
basically, like internally, when your immune system fights a virus, it eventually
yeah,
develops an antibody that
yeah,
protects you from it, right? You're trying to
yeah,
develop the antibodies to
yeah,
fight
yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you say fight the virus in a general term, I think that it's too abstract of a concept for people to visualize what we're really trying to do. Because when I say you're trying to help your body develop antibodies, it has to do something totally new. It has to fight off this thing and develop and create something completely on its own, a vaccine to fight it. And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
requires putting your body in the best possible circumstances so it can figure out
yeah,
how to do this, because you have no control
yeah.
over it. All you can do is feed it and water it right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The best, one of the best defenses, right, other than keeping away from people and just trying to not get the virus in the first place, is try to keep healthy, right? Trying to keep healthy is not going to help you. It's not going to guarantee your survival, but it might help a bit.
Well, that's the whole
Um,
thing, right? You're going to give yourself the best chance to build antibodies as quickly as like you're building that window, and you want to
yeah,
open this window as long as possible. And some
yeah,
people have the window naturally cut short, and we have to
yeah,
protect them. But if you don't have that window naturally cut short, then we should be making sure that window is open as big as possible. And I think that's from my end. You're the scientist, but from my big ideas end of things, it seems like that's the direction we really need to take things, because if we're talking about rebuilding society or more stimulus packages or anything else, I don't think we can do it without discussing how we protect ourselves from this continued situation that we could, like you said, we could have the first SARS come back, we could have MERS come back, we could have any of these things come back. And if our already taxed healthcare system isn't able to handle our current situation, and we get anything on, God, if we get alien invasions right now, we are so screwed. There's nothing, there's anything right now would push us, a bad earthquake, a serious fire, anything, a riot. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm only slightly worried. I try to tell people, it's not a matter of if we're going to riot. It's a matter of if they're going to be minimal or not. Here we are. So enjoy your rural setting if you're in one. On that note, because I'm being super depressing, and I hope that Andy cuts all this, is there anything else that we need to cover today that's happening, that's like changing in the news or going on that people should be mindful of it? We haven't gotten to. I mean, we're still always talking about the next thing we're going to talk about that we're not talking about right now. But is there anything else?
Let me think. So obviously, like I said, in Illinois, they've told everyone to wear a mask. I have a feeling that those orders are going to be happening kind of across the country if they're not already in place. I still doubt at this point that there's going to be a federal shelter-in-place order. I just don't think it's going to happen. I keep waiting for it to happen, but
no, I don't think it's going to either. Trump keeps talking about reopening the country and restarting business, and it's not going to happen. He's starting to realize that they're going to have to dump another 2 to 6 trillion into everything, and he's like, that's the bailout of bailouts, and he's like, but how? And now he's in a tough spot with re-election, because on one hand he's giving everyone money, on one hand this is the big government he runs against. He's suddenly the biggest government ever.
Exactly, right? No, I mean, to anybody out there who's not yet, you really gotta try to minimize person-to-person interaction. If you are going to be interacting with other people, if you're one of those essential workers that unfortunately our economy just, they need to survive. What we need to keep society moving. We really need to push to make sure that you are properly protected, that you have proper PPE. And I'm not just talking about doctors and nurses. Obviously, it's very important that they have proper protective equipment. But if you say work at a gas station, or if you work in food service, and if you work at a grocery store and you have to go to work, it's very important that you have personal protective equipment. If you are not being given that equipment, or not being given the opportunity by your employer to have that equipment, you need to talk to somebody. Talk to your mayor, talk to your city council, talk to your state representative, and make sure that you have the protective equipment that you need, because you have been judged to be essential, so you need to be protected. That's really what I have to say.
It is pretty interesting watching all the people who didn't deserve $15 an hour be told that they're essential workers right now, which is interesting about how it's really just, people go, oh, it's not that we don't value your life. We don't actually value your life. That's why we're telling, not only we're not going to pay you enough, but we're going to force you to work when you shouldn't be working, because we don't value you. And that's ultimately what this is coming down to. And they're a necessity, but it's not really what they mean when they say necessity. That's not, they're not saying it like you deserve money. They're saying it like you deserve to not have anything and do what we tell you, which is really messed up. Sorry. I just sort of realized that as we're saying it, as I'm saying it, I'm realizing this is true. And I'm just like, oh God, let's get out of here. Dylan, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. It's always great to have you on. It's not totally depressing, because we kind of know what's going on, but at the same time, people need to be prepared, and they know what they're getting into when they click on these interviews. So hopefully one day it'll be you explaining how the cure works. I mean, that'll be really something to look forward to. You're like, they came from the sky. It's a mist you put in your nose. You only grow one tentacle. It's fine. I keep trying to keep the eat the rich thing alive, because I'm pretty sure that zombies aren't going to happen, but I really want a zombie apocalypse one way or another. So I'm like, eat the rich is the way we're going. It's my backup plan. So it's actually several people's backup plan. On that note, I'm John Ford. This has been Dylan Burdette. Thank you so much, Dylan. Again, if you like the shirt, which I don't know if you can see it or not, I'll get a better angle for it. It's part of our Patreon. We also have these cups, but it's not going to be like this. It's on this side. There's things going on. So please check out our other videos. If you like this, you can also see my videos with Dylan evolve from a very polite conversation over science to how the apocalypse is going this week. So maybe that's what we'll call our segment, Dylan. We'll call it the apocalypse this week, or in this week in apocalypse.
Yeah.
In this week in that. There we go. In this week in apocalypse. Yeah, that's gonna be our thing. All right. On that note, we are out of here. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.